The last mugs have been washed, and the lanterns are turned low. I have saved the warmest corner by the fire for you, the one with the little library shelf and the chairs that seem to sigh when you sit in them. Outside, the rain has found its evening rhythm against the thatch, a soft and steady patter that has been falling since dusk, and the canal water laps gently at the dock posts in that slow, sleepy way it does when the boats have all gone still. If you like, I will tell you about our retired archmage, the one who lives in the rooms above the back reading nook, and the gentle way they keep their magic put neatly to rest. Come, settle in. The fire is warm, and the story is softer still. There exists in the eastern wing of this old tavern a room that few travelers ever find, and fewer still remember to ask about. It is not hidden by any spell or warding, nothing so dramatic as that, but rather tucked away behind a door of dark-stained oak that sits at the far end of a corridor, where the floorboards creak in a particular way, and where the lamplight always seems a shade more golden than elsewhere. The door has no sign upon it, only a small brass handle worn smooth by years of quiet use, and if you were to press that handle down and step through, you would find yourself in what I have always called the hearth room, though the archmage who dwells there simply calls it home. The room is shaped like a half moon, with curved walls lined floor to ceiling with shelves of varying depths, each one bearing the weight of a different kind of remembering. There are shelves for books, yes, leather-bound volumes with titles pressed in faded gilt, their spines soft with age and handling. But there are also shelves for bottles, for boxes, for folded squares of cloth and coiled lengths of silver chain. Small drawers are set into the lower portions of the shelving, each one labelled in a careful hand, and above the highest shelf runs a narrow rail from which hang pouches of herbs and tiny sachets that release their fragrance into the room like slow exhalations. At the center of it all stands the hearth itself, a generous fireplace built of river stone, its mantle carved with acorns and oak leaves that have been polished by countless hands resting upon them over the years. The fire within burns low tonight, as it often does when the evening has grown late, but its glow is enough to warm the room and to cast a gentle amber light across the worn rugs and the two large armchairs that face the flames. One of those chairs is empty and waiting, its cushions plumped and ready. The other holds the archmage. They are older now than they were in the days when bards sang their name in distant halls, but age has settled upon them kindly, like snow upon a mountainside, softening the lines rather than sharpening them, lending a certain quietness to features that were once sharp with purpose. Their hair, once dark as a raven's wing, has gone silver at the temples and white at the crown, and they wear it long, gathered loosely at the nape of their neck with a cord of braided leather. Their robes are simple these days, a deep blue wool that has been mended at the elbows and hemmed to accommodate slippers rather than traveling boots. Upon their lap rests a ledger bound in brown leather, its pages thick with entries written in different colors of ink, and their hands that once summoned fire from nothing and calmed storms with a gesture, now rest peacefully upon its cover, fingers slightly curled, as if cradling something precious. The fire crackles softly, a sound like whispered conversation, and somewhere deeper in the room, a kettle has begun to hum, its voice rising in that slow, patient way that kettles have when they know there is no rush, when they understand that the water will warm in its own time and the tea will be made when the tea is ready to be made. The rain continues its gentle percussion against the window, and through the leaded glass panes one can see nothing but the soft blur of water and the occasional flicker of the lamp that hangs beside the tavern door, its light dancing in the wet darkness like a friendly star. I have known the archmage for many years now, ever since they came to this tavern, seeking not adventure, but rest, not glory, but a good chair and a room where the fire never quite goes out. They had travelled far in their youth, farther than most can imagine, through forests where the trees remembered the first sunrise, across mountains where the wind sang in languages older than speech, into cities built on clouds and villages nestled in the roots of ancient trees. They had faced dangers, yes, and known triumphs, but when they speak of those days now, it is not the battles they remember most fondly. It is the quiet moments between, the campfires shared with kind companions, the inns where the bread was fresh and the blankets were warm, the dawns that came soft and pink after long nights of walking, when the world seemed newly made and full of gentle promise. Those memories they once told me are what they keep now, not in their mind alone, where such things can grow hazy and uncertain with the passing years, but here, in this room, on these shelves, in the careful pages of this ledger, every bottle holds a story, every folded map recalls a journey, every small stone or feather or bit of dried flower was gathered from a place that mattered, a moment that deserved to be remembered, and the Archmage has made it their life's work, their life's rest, they might say, to tend these things with the same care they once gave to great workings of magic. Tonight, as the rain falls and the fire murmurs, the Archmage opens their ledger. It is a ritual they perform each evening, this opening of the ledger, and they do not rush it. First, they shift in their chair, finding that particular position where the cushions support them just so, where their shoulders can drop and their spine can settle into the gentle curve the chair has learned over years of holding them. Then they place their feet flat upon the rug, feeling the soft wool beneath their slippers, grounding themselves in the simple sensation of being held by the floor, by the chair, by the room itself. And then, only then, they take a long, slow breath. The breath fills their chest, expanding their ribs, lifting their shoulders just slightly before letting them fall again, as the air releases in a quiet sigh. It is a breath that makes room, the Archmage has explained to me. A breath that clears the dust from the corners of the mind, that sweeps away the small worries of the day like leaves before a gentle broom. A breath that says, now we begin. Now we are here, in this moment, with nothing to chase and nowhere to be, but exactly where we are. The ledger falls open to a page marked with a ribbon of faded green silk. The entries there are written in brown ink that has mellowed with age, each line recording an item, a location, a brief note. Bottle of starlight, third shelf, eastern wall. Gathered from the Willowmere marshes, summer of the long sunsets. Corked and sealed with beeswax. Below it, map of the Shepherd's Road, drawer 17. Given by the cartographer of River Hollow, who asked for nothing in return but a story. And below that, feather from a dreaming owl, small box beside the window, found at the base of the great library oak, the morning after the first snowfall. Each entry is a doorway, and each doorway leads somewhere warm. The Archmage runs a finger down the margin of the page, not reading so much as remembering, and the firelight catches the gold of an old ring upon their hand. A ring they have worn so long, it has become part of them. Its metal smoothed by years of being twisted absently while thinking. Its small blue stone clouded now but still faintly luminous in certain lights. The ring was a gift, they told me once, from a friend who had passed on long ago, and wearing it is its own kind of keeping, its own kind of inventory. The kettle's hum has grown deeper now, approaching the edge of singing, and the Archmage glances toward it with a small smile. We will have tea soon, they say, their voice soft and unhurried, carrying the cadence of someone who has learned that most things worth saying can be said slowly. But first, I thought we might sort a few things together. Nothing complicated, nothing urgent, just a bit of gentle tending, the way one might straighten a row of books or fold a blanket at the foot of a bed. The magic in these things is patient. It has waited years already. It can wait a few minutes more while we settle in. They close the ledger with a soft sound, like a sigh given form, and set it aside on the small table between the chairs. A candle burns there, its flame hardly moving in the still air, and beside it rests a cloth of soft grey linen, a pair of spectacles with round brass frames, and a pen whose nib gleams dully in the light. These are the tools of inventory, as essential to the archmage now as wand and staff once were. Outside, the rain continues its lullaby, and the fire settles lower in the grate, its flames gentling from dance to sway. The room seems to breathe around us, in and out, keeping time with the slow pulse of the evening. And in the warmth of that breathing room, the archmage leans back in their chair, lets their eyes drift half closed for just a moment, and waits. Not for anything in particular, just waits. Because waiting, they have learned, is its own kind of peace, and peace is what we have come here to find. The kettle begins to sing. The singing of the kettle faded into a gentle whisper as the archmage rose from their chair, and the movement was slow, deliberate, the kind of rising that takes its time because there is no hurry, because the body has learned that rushing leads only to strain and never to arrival any quicker. They crossed the room to the small iron stove where the kettle sat, their slippers making soft sounds against the worn floorboards, and as they went, they passed through a shaft of firelight that turned their silver hair briefly to gold. The kettle was a simple thing, black iron with a curved handle wrapped in leather to protect the hand, and when the archmage lifted it from the heat, the singing ceased, replaced by the quieter sound of water settling, of steam rising in slow curls toward the ceiling. They poured the water into a pot of dark clay, where leaves of chamomile and lavender had already been measured, and the fragrance that rose was soft and green and faintly sweet, the smell of meadows at twilight, of gardens after rain. "We will let that steep," the archmage said, more to the room than to anyone in particular, and they returned to their chair with that same unhurried gait, settling back into the cushions like water finding its level. While we wait, perhaps we will begin with the bottles. They are always patient, the bottles. They have held their contents for so long that a few more minutes of waiting seems like nothing to them at all. They reached toward the shelf nearest their chair, where a row of small vessels stood in careful arrangement. Amber glass, blue glass, glass the color of spring leaves, and one bottle so clear it seemed almost to disappear, visible only by the way the light bent around its curves. Each bottle bore a label written in the archmage's hand. The ink faded to shades of brown and violet, and each was stoppered with cork or wax, or in one case, what appeared to be a small wooden bead carved in the shape of an acorn. The archmage selected the clear bottle first, lifting it from the shelf with both hands, cradling it the way one might cradle a sleeping bird. Through the glass, something shimmered. Not liquid, not solid, but something between. Light, perhaps, if light could be gathered and kept. The glow was faint, the color of moonbeams, and as the archmage turned the bottle slowly in their hands, the light seemed to swirl and eddy, responding to the movement with a gentle luminescence that cast soft shadows on the wall behind. "Starlight," the archmage murmured, their voice carrying the warmth of fond remembrance. "From the Willowmere marshes, a very long time ago. I was young then, younger than I can quite believe now, and I had gone to the marshes searching for something else entirely, a particular kind of moss that grew only where the water was still, and the air was thick with mist. I never did find the moss, but I found this instead. They held the bottle up to the firelight, and for a moment the two lights seemed to mingle, gold and silver interweaving like threads in a tapestry. No, like currents in a slow river, each flowing around the other without conflict or confusion. The night I gathered it was warm, the Archmage continued, their eyes distant now, looking at something beyond the room, beyond the walls, beyond the rain. Summer had lingered late that year, and the air smelled of water lilies and the green growing things that love the wet. I had made camp on a little hillock at the edge of the marsh, hardly more than a dry patch among the reeds, and I was sitting by my small fire when I noticed the stars coming out. Not all at once, you understand. One by one, like candles being lit in windows of a great house, each star appearing in its place as if it had been waiting all day for its moment to shine. The fire crackled softly, and the rain whispered against the window, and the Archmage's voice wove between the sounds like another kind of music. And then I saw it, the way the starlight was falling on the water, not just reflecting, but falling, like gentle rain made of light, each droplet a tiny spark that touched the surface and sank slowly down into the depths. The marsh was catching stars, keeping them in its dark water, the way a mirror keeps the image of a face. And I thought, I wonder if I could keep some too, not to use for anything, just to have, just to hold a bit of that night, that warmth, that feeling of being small and quiet in a world full of large and gentle things. The bottle turned again in the Archmage's hands, and the starlight within pulsed faintly, as if remembering too. So I took this bottle from my pack. It had held ink once, before I emptied it and washed it clean, and I held it to the surface of the water, and I waited. I did not cast a spell. I did not speak a word. I only waited, patient as the reeds, patient as the water, and after a long while the starlight began to seep into the bottle, slow as honey, bright as hope. It took most of the night to gather this much. I fell asleep waiting for the bottle to fill, and when I woke with the dawn, the cork had somehow found its way into the neck, sealing the light inside. I have never been certain whether I did that myself while dreaming, or whether the marsh did it for me as a gift. The Archmage lowered the bottle and reached for the soft grey cloth that lay on the side table. With movements as gentle as the story they had just told, they began to wipe the glass, cleaning away the thin layer of dust that had settled over the weeks since the bottle was last handled. The cloth made soft sounds against the surface, and the starlight within seemed to brighten slightly, as if pleased by the attention. "There," the Archmage said, when the bottle gleamed clean in the firelight. "Better. Even patient things deserve a bit of care now and then." They turned the bottle to examine its label, squinting slightly through their spectacles. The label read, "Willowmere Starlight, Summer of Long Sunsets, Gathered with Gratitude." The words were still legible, though the ink had faded from black to a warm brown that looked almost like dried leaves. "The label is holding," the Archmage observed, running a thumb along its edge. "Good. These small papers have a way of curling at the corners after enough years, but this one has stayed true." They returned the bottle to its place on the shelf, settling it into the small wooden ring that held it upright, and for a moment they simply looked at it, watching the way the firelight played through the glass, watching the starlight drift and shimmer within. Then they let out a long, slow breath, the kind of breath that carries contentment in its wake, and reached for the next bottle. This one was amber, the color of honey held up to the sun, and its contents did not glow but rather seemed to absorb the light around them, holding it inside the way a gem holds color. The label on this bottle was older still. the letters cramped and careful in a script the Archmage had used only in their earliest traveling days. "Ah," they said, a soft sound of recognition. The breath of the singing caves. I had almost forgotten this was here. They cradled the amber bottle and settled deeper into their chair, and as they did so, the fire seemed to settle too, its flames dropping lower, its light growing softer, its voice becoming little more than a murmur of coals. "The singing caves lie in the mountains to the north," the Archmage said, "in a range that has no name, or rather has so many names, given by so many peoples over so many ages, that no single name has ever stuck. The caves themselves are ancient, older than the mountains, some say, though I do not know how such a thing could be true. When the wind passes through them, it plays upon the stone the way a musician plays upon a flute, and the sound that emerges is like nothing else in the world. Not quite music, not quite voice, but something between. A humming, a breathing, a song without words that seems to come from the mountain itself." The Archmage turned the amber bottle in their hands, watching the way the light moved within it, thick and slow. "I visited the caves in winter," they continued, "when the snow lay deep upon the passes and the wind blew fierce and cold. It was not an easy journey. Many days of walking through white silence, sleeping in shelters I carved from the snowdrifts, eating dried fruit and hard bread from my pack. But when I finally reached the caves, and when I heard that singing for the first time, I knew that every step had been worth the taking." They paused, and in the pause the rain seemed to grow quieter outside, as if it too were listening. "I stayed there 3 days," the Archmage said, "not doing anything, just sitting at the mouth of the largest cave, wrapped in my warmest cloak, listening to the mountain breathe. And on the 3rd day, as I was preparing to leave, I noticed that my empty water flask had filled with something, not water, but air, the cave's breath. It had seeped in through the stopper, filling the space inside, and when I held the flask to my ear, I could hear, very faintly, the echo of that singing. So I transferred it to this bottle, which sealed more tightly, and I have kept it ever since." The Archmage brought the amber bottle close to their ear, tilting their head, and their expression grew soft and distant. "Very faint now," they murmured, "but still there, still singing after all these years." They lowered the bottle and reached for the cloth once more, wiping it clean with the same gentle care they had given the starlight, and when it gleamed like autumn leaves in sunlight, they returned it to its place on the shelf, next to its clearer sibling. The fire crackled once, a gentle sound, and the Archmage's hands came to rest in their lap, palms upturned, as if receiving the warmth that radiated from the hearth. They sat like that for a long moment, neither moving nor speaking, simply letting the quietness of the room wash over them like water over smooth stones. The dust motes drifted in the amber light, turning slowly, falling so gradually that their descent seemed almost like floating, like the smallest and softest of dances. And watching those motes, those tiny travelers of the air, the Archmage let their breathing slow to match the rhythm of the fire, the rhythm of the rain, the rhythm of the room itself. In and out, in and out. Nothing to chase, nothing to hold, only the warmth and the light and the gentle passage of time. The tea had finished steeping while the bottles were being tended, and when the Archmage finally rose to pour it, the fragrance of chamomile and lavender had deepened into something rich and soothing, a scent that seemed to settle into the corners of the room like a blessing. They poured 2 cups, one for themselves and one for the empty chair beside them, because that is the way of those who have spent long years in company and who have not yet lost the habit of hospitality. and they set the cups upon the small table between the chairs, where the steam rose in lazy spirals toward the ceiling. "We will drink in a moment," the Archmage said, settling back into their seat with a soft sigh of contentment. "Let it cool just a bit. There is no pleasure in burning one's tongue after all, and the warmth will keep." They adjusted the cushion behind their back, finding that perfect position again, the one where everything seemed to align just so, where the body could release its small tensions and simply be held by the chair, by the room, by the quiet evening. The fire had burned down to a bed of glowing coals now, its light steadier and more golden than before, and the shadows it cast had grown soft at the edges, gentle as old memories. "Now," the Archmage said, reaching toward a different section of the shelving, a lower portion where the drawers were deeper and the labels more worn. "Let us see to the pockets." The drawer they opened was lined with velvet the color of midnight, and within it lay an assortment of pouches, satchels, and small bags of various sizes and materials. Some were made of leather, soft and supple with age, the kind of leather that has been handled so often it feels almost like cloth. Others were woven from fabric, silk, linen, wool in muted colors. And still others were made of materials harder to name, something that might have been spider silk, something that might have been woven moonlight, something that shimmered faintly with an iridescence that shifted between green and gold depending on how the light fell upon it. "These," the Archmage said, lifting a small pouch of brown leather from the drawer, "are not ordinary bags, as you might imagine. Each one holds more than it seems. Enchanted pockets, we called them in the old days, though the magic is gentle enough. Just a bit of extra space folded inside, the way a letter might be folded into an envelope that seems too small for it. Very useful for travelers who wish to carry much without being burdened by the weight." They opened the pouch and reached inside, and their hand went deeper than seemed possible given the bag's small size, disappearing up to the wrist before emerging again with a square of folded cloth clutched between their fingers. "Ah," they said, unfolding the cloth with careful movements, laying it flat upon their knee. "My traveling cloak, or what remains of it at any rate. I cut it down many years ago when the fabric began to wear thin in places. Kept this piece though, it still remembers the road." The cloth was dark blue, faded in places to a softer shade that was almost grey, and its weave was fine and tight, the work of skilled hands. The Archmage smoothed it with their palm, feeling the texture of the fibers, the slight roughness where the fabric had been mended, the softer patches where it had worn smooth from years of draping over shoulders, of folding and unfolding, of being wrapped around a sleeping form on countless nights beneath unfamiliar stars. "This cloak went with me everywhere," the Archmage said, their voice soft with remembering. "Through the singing caves and the Willowmere marshes, through the forest of whispers and the plains of golden grass. It kept me warm when the nights grew cold, and shaded me when the sun grew fierce. It served as blanket and tent and disguise. Once, I wrapped a wounded fawn in its folds and carried it to safety. Once, I spread it upon the ground for a queen who had lost her way and needed a clean place to rest while her guards found the path again." They began to fold the cloth, their movements slow and deliberate, each fold precise and unhurried. First in half lengthwise, the blue fabric meeting itself like old friends reuniting. Then in half again and again, the square growing smaller and neater with each iteration, the Archmage's hands smoothing out every crease, every wrinkle, with patient attention. "There is a certain peace in folding," the Archmage observed, their eyes on their work, their breathing slow and even. "In taking something rumpled and giving it order, in preparing it for rest. We do the same with our days, I think, when we have done all we can do and the evening comes. We fold away the worries. We smooth out the wrinkles. We make a neat package that can be set aside until morning. And in the morning, if we need them again, they are there. But often we find that we do not need them after all. Often we find that they have smoothed themselves out in the night, the way fabric relaxes when left to lie flat and still. The final fold completed, the Archmage held the small, neat square of cloth in both hands, looking at it with an expression of fond satisfaction. Then they slipped it back into the leather pouch, which seemed to swallow it easily despite the mismatch of sizes, and set the pouch aside. From the drawer they drew out another item, a satchel of silvery fabric that caught the firelight and held it, shimmering like water under moonlight. This one was larger than the first, with a long strap meant to be worn across the shoulder, and its clasp was a small silver feather that seemed almost to flutter in an unfelt breeze. "This was a gift," the Archmage said, turning the satchel over in their hands, examining the stitching at the seams, the wear at the corners. "From a traveling companion I knew for only a single season, though it felt like much longer. We had met by chance at a crossroads, quite literally, where four roads came together under an ancient oak, and we had traveled together until our paths diverged again, as paths always do. When we parted, she gave me this, said it had been her mother's and her grandmother's before that, and that it was time for it to find a new home." The Archmage undid the silver feather clasp and reached inside the satchel, drawing out a smooth stone about the size of a hen's egg. The stone was grey, unremarkable in colour, but its surface was perfectly smooth, as if it had been polished by centuries of river water or by countless hands holding it, turning it, worrying it like a talisman. "A worry stone," the Archmage said, rolling it in their palm, feeling its weight, its coolness, the way it fit so perfectly in the hollow of their hand. She said her grandmother had found it on a beach somewhere far to the west, where the sea was green instead of blue, and the sand was black as coal. The stone had been shaped by the waves, she said, by years and years of being tumbled and smoothed, all its rough edges worn away until only this remained, this calm, perfect roundness that asks nothing and holds everything. They closed their fingers around the stone and held it for a long moment, eyes half closed, breathing slow and deep. The fire crackled once, quietly, and then settled into silence. The rain continued its soft rhythm against the window, and somewhere in the walls of the old tavern, a timber creaked as the building settled more deeply into its foundations, at ease with itself and the night. "When I hold this stone," the Archmage said at last, their voice barely above a whisper now, "I do not think of anything in particular. I do not try to solve problems or plan journeys or remember names and dates. I simply hold it and feel its weight and let my thoughts drift where they will. And usually they drift towards stillness, toward that quiet place where the mind can rest, the way the body rests in a good chair, the way the stone itself rested at the bottom of the sea before it was found." They opened their hand and looked at the stone again, turning it to catch the firelight, watching the subtle variations in its grey surface, the way shadows pooled in tiny indentations, invisible to any but the closest observation. "That is what these pockets hold, I think," the Archmage said, placing the stone back into the silvery satchel and closing the feather clasp with a soft click. "Not just objects, not just memories, but moments of peace, folded away like cloth, smoothed and kept, and ready to be unfolded whenever they are needed. Every traveler needs such pockets. Every life needs such spaces where the calm things can be kept safe." They returned the satchel to the drawer, settling it gently among its companions, and then they reached for another item, a small pouch of deep green velvet, its drawstring made of braided gold thread that had gone slightly dull with age. "This one," they said, loosening the drawstring and peering inside. Holds maps. Not magical maps, nothing so grand as that. Just ordinary maps, drawn on ordinary paper, of places that meant something to me once. The village where I stopped to help an old woman carry her water. The harbour where I watched the fishing boats come home at sunset, their sails turning pink and orange in the dying light. The mountain pass where I sheltered from a storm and shared my fire with a group of pilgrims who taught me songs I have never forgotten. The Archmage drew out one of the maps, a small square of parchment yellowed with age, and unfolded it with great care, handling it as one handles something precious and fragile. The map showed a winding road, a forest marked with tiny trees, a river that curved like a sleeping snake, and in one corner, a small drawing of a cottage with smoke rising from its chimney. This cottage, the Archmage said, pointing to the drawing, belonged to a healer who lived alone at the edge of the wood of many colors. I came to her once with a fever that had laid me low for days, and she took me in without question, gave me broth and medicine, and a bed by her fire, and refused to accept any payment when I was well again. The kindness you show to others will be your payment to me, she said, and so I have tried all these years to honor that debt. Not because I must, but because it is the right way to carry such a gift forward. They folded the map again, slowly, carefully, matching the old creases exactly, and returned it to the green velvet pouch. Then they tightened the gold drawstring, placed the pouch back in the drawer, and closed the drawer with a soft sound that seemed to seal away not just objects, but entire worlds, entire lifetimes, all of them resting now in their proper places. The Archmage leaned back in their chair once more, and their hands came to rest upon the arms of the chair, feeling the worn wood beneath their palms, the smooth places where the varnish had been touched away by years of such resting. The fire glowed on, patient and warm, and the tea in the cups had cooled now to just the right temperature, sending up only the faintest wisps of steam. "Shall we drink?" the Archmage asked, and though the question seemed addressed to no one in particular, it felt like an invitation, like a gentle beckoning toward the next moment, the next small pleasure, the next soft descent into the peace of the evening. They lifted their cup and cradled it in both hands, feeling the warmth seep through the clay, spreading from palm to wrist to arm, a slow tide of comfort that asked nothing in return but the willingness to receive it. And in the quiet of the hearth room, with the rain falling soft outside and the fire glowing soft within, the Archmage closed their eyes, breathed in the fragrance of chamomile and lavender, and let the world grow still around them, still and safe and perfectly at peace. The tea was perfect, as tea often is when it has been made without hurry and allowed to steep in its own time. The Archmage sipped slowly, letting each mouthful rest upon the tongue before swallowing, tasting the floral sweetness of the chamomile, the gentle earthiness of the lavender, the faint honey that had been stirred into the pot along with the leaves. Outside, the rain had settled into a steadier rhythm now, less a patter than a whisper, a continuous soft sound that wove itself into the fabric of the evening, like thread into cloth. "When I was young," the Archmage said, lowering their cup and letting it rest upon the saucer with a delicate clink, "I did not understand the pleasure of sitting still. I was always moving, always seeking, always convinced that the next hill or the next horizon held something I needed, something I was missing. And perhaps that was true for a time. Perhaps all young hearts need to wander before they learn to settle. But I am grateful now for the stillness. I am grateful for evenings like this, when there is nowhere to go and nothing to do but tend to the small things, the quiet things, the things that ask only for attention and return so much more than they receive." They set the cup aside, and reached for the ledger that lay upon the small table, the worn leather cover soft beneath their fingers. Beside the ledger sat a pot of ink, dark blue, the color of a late twilight sky, and the pen with its gleaming nib, waiting patiently for use. "Now," the Archmage said, opening the ledger to a page marked with a ribbon the color of dried roses, "we come to the writing. Not all inventory is handled with hands alone. Some of it must be recorded, set down in ink, made real upon the page. There is a magic in that too, you know. The magic of naming, the magic of acknowledgement. When we write a thing down, we give it weight and permanence. We say, this matters. This is worth remembering. This deserves a place in the record of the world." The page before them was half filled with entries, each one written in the Archmage's careful hand, each one documenting an item, a location, a brief description. The most recent entries were still dark with fresh ink, but as the eye traveled up the page, the writing faded gradually from blue to violet to a soft brown, the colors shifting like the changing of seasons, like the slow passage of years made visible. The Archmage uncapped the pot of ink, and the scent that rose from it was rich and mineral, the smell of iron and oak gall, of crushed berries, and something almost like rain. They dipped the pen into the ink, drawing it out slowly, watching the way the liquid clung to the nib in a perfect drop that seemed to contain within it all the potential of every word ever written. "Let us see," they murmured, consulting a small slip of paper that lay beside the ledger, covered in notes. "Ah, yes, the silver mirror from the Tower of Echoes. I had set it aside for cleaning last week and forgot to record its return." They began to write, the nib moving across the page in smooth strokes, forming letters that flowed one into the next like water finding its way downhill. The sound of the pen was soft, a gentle scratching that harmonized with the crackle of the fire and the whisper of the rain, adding another voice to the quiet chorus of the room. "Silver mirror, Tower of Echoes," the Archmage wrote, "cleaned and polished on the third evening of the leaf-full moon. Returned to its place on the western shelf, third tier from the bottom. Shows true reflection regardless of light. Handle with care. The glass is old and remembers more than it shows." They lifted the pen and read the entry back, lips moving silently, and then nodded in satisfaction. The pen returned to the inkwell, releasing its burden of blue, and the Archmage sat for a moment, looking at the words they had written, watching the ink dry slowly from gleaming wet to matte, from liquid to permanent. "There is something restful about ink," the Archmage observed, leaning back in their chair, letting their hand rest upon the open page without quite touching it. "The way it transforms as it dries, the way it commits itself to the paper, becoming part of it, inseparable from it. Once the ink has dried, the words belong to the page forever. They cannot be unsaid, cannot be unwrit, and somehow that feels not confining, but liberating. The decision has been made. The record has been kept. Now we can let go of the need to remember, because the remembering has been done for us." The fire crackled softly, a log shifting in the grate, and the Archmage's gaze drifted toward it, watching the dance of embers along the wood's edge, the slow consumption that was also a kind of transformation, matter becoming heat, becoming light, becoming the warmth that filled the room. "I used to write by firelight often," they said, their voice soft and distant, touched by memory. "In camps along the road, in inn-rooms not so different from this one, in forest clearings where the flames were the only light for miles. The words always looked different by firelight, warmer, more alive, as if the fire's glow seeped into the ink somehow, lending its own magic to whatever was written." They reached for a second slip of paper, consulting their notes again, and then dipped the pen once more into the ink. Dried flowers from the garden of perpetual spring, they wrote, the words forming with deliberate slowness, each letter given its full due of attention. Pressed and preserved in the green journal, drawer 12, gathered many years ago, still fragrant, still holding their color. The garden itself may be gone now, lost to war or flood or simple forgetting, but these petals remain. The pen lifted, the ink dried. The archmage turned the page gently, as one might turn the page of a beloved book, with care and anticipation, and began another entry. Map of the Shepherd's Road, drawer 17. Re-examined and found to be intact. Some foxing at the edges, but the lines remain clear. The cartographer who drew it was named Ellery, and he lived in a house by the river, and he had a cat named Compass, who would sit on his work table and supervise every drawing. The rain picked up briefly outside, a gentle surge of sound that rose and then fell again, like the breathing of the night itself. The archmage paused in their writing, pen hovering above the page, and listened. The sound was soothing, hypnotic almost, a natural white noise that seemed to muffle the world beyond the tavern walls, to shrink the universe down to just this room, this fire, this moment of quiet industry. When I listened to the rain, the archmage said, still not writing, still holding the pen in midair, I sometimes think of all the places I have heard it fall, on tent canvas in the highlands, on the broad leaves of tropical forests, where each drop made its own distinct note, on the cobblestones of ancient cities, where the gutters ran like rivers, and the whole world seemed washed clean. Rain is the same everywhere, and different everywhere, all at once. Perhaps that is why it sounds so much like home, no matter where you are. They lowered the pen to the page again and continued writing, the soft scratching sound resuming its place in the evening symphony. Feather from a dreaming owl, the next entry read, small box beside the window, still holds a faint shimmer when viewed in moonlight. The owl that gave it was said to carry messages between the waking world and the realm of sleep. I found the feather at the base of the great library oak on a morning after the first snowfall, and I have kept it ever since, hoping that perhaps it might carry a message or two for me as well. The archmage set down the pen and flexed their hand slowly, stretching the fingers, rotating the wrist, releasing the small tension that comes from gripping even the lightest of implements for too long. They watched their own hand as they did this, observing the movement of tendons beneath the skin, the subtle play of muscle and bone that made such small miracles as writing possible. The body knows when it is time to rest, they said, letting the hands settle back into their lap, palm up, fingers gently curled. Even before the mind admits it, the body knows. The shoulders tighten, the jaw clenches. The breath becomes shallow without our noticing. And then, if we are wise, we stop what we are doing and we listen. We stretch. We breathe. We let the tension drain away like water from a cup. They demonstrated, rolling their shoulders back once, twice, feeling the joints release their small burdens, then letting out a long, slow breath that seemed to carry with it all the small strains of the day, all the tiny holdings on that accumulate without our knowledge. There, they said, and their voice was softer now, slower, as if the breath had carried some of its energy away as well. Better. The fire had burned very low now, reduced to a bed of coals that glowed red and orange, pulsing gently like the heartbeat of the room. The light it cast was dimmer than before, more intimate, turning the shadows deeper and the bright places warmer. The bottles on the shelves caught what light remained and held it, their contents gleaming faintly, patiently, asking for nothing. The archmage lifted the teacup once more, and drank the last of the tea, feeling the warmth spread through them from chest to belly, a gentle tide of comfort that asked nothing in return but the willingness to receive it. Then they set the cup down with a soft clink and let their hands rest upon the arms of the chair, feeling the smooth wood, the worn places, the years of peaceful evenings contained in every grain. The rain continued its soft rhythm outside. The fire continued its quiet breathing within. And in the hearth room, surrounded by shelves full of gentle memories, the archmage let their eyes drift half closed and simply listened to the library breathing, in and out, keeping time with the slow pulse of the night. "We are doing well," they murmured, to no one and to everyone. "We are doing just fine." The hour had grown late, though time in the hearth room seemed to move differently than it did elsewhere, slower and softer, less concerned with minutes and moments than with the gentle rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The fire had been tended while we were not watching. A few fresh logs added to the coals, their bark now beginning to char and glow, and the light in the room had steadied, neither brighter nor dimmer than before, simply constant, simply warm. The archmage had set aside the ledger and the pen, their writing complete for the evening, the new entries drying quietly on the page. Now they sat forward in their chair, reaching toward a shelf that stood at arm's length, a shelf lined with small objects arranged in careful rows, each one bearing its own small label, its own small story. "We come now to the placing," they said, their voice soft and unhurried, carrying the cadence of approaching sleep. "The final part of the inventory, not the counting or the cleaning or the recording, but the returning, the setting of each thing in its proper place, where it can rest undisturbed until the next time it is needed, which may be tomorrow or may be never. The placing is my favorite part, I think. There is such peace in it, such satisfaction in knowing that everything is where it belongs." They lifted a small object from the table beside them, a carved wooden bird, no larger than a walnut, its wings folded against its body, its head turned slightly as if listening for something only it could hear. The carving was old, the wood darkened with age and handling, but the details were still clear, each feather etched with care, each talon rendered with precision, the whole thing speaking of hours of patient work by hands that had loved what they were making. "A gift," the archmage said, turning the bird slowly in their fingers, feeling its weight, its smoothness, the slight roughness where the carving tool had left its marks. "From a woodcutter I met in the northern forests many years ago. I had stopped at his cottage to ask for water. My flask had run dry during the day's walk, and he invited me in for supper instead. A simple meal, bread and cheese, and apples from his trees, but shared with such warmth that it felt like a feast. When I left the next morning, he pressed this bird into my hand. 'For luck on the road,' he said. 'My daughter carved it before she went away to the city. It has traveled far already. It might as well travel a little farther.' The archmage looked at the bird for a long moment, their expressions soft with remembrance, and then they reached toward the shelf and found the small wooden stand where the bird belonged. A tiny perch, barely more than an inch-high block with a curved depression carved into its top, perfectly sized to cradle the bird's rounded base. 'There,' they said, settling the bird into its place, watching it find its balance, its natural resting position. 'Kept safe, put away, nothing to chase.' They sat back in their chair and took a slow, deep breath, letting it fill their chest, letting it lift their shoulders slightly before releasing it in a long, quiet sigh. The breath seemed to carry something with it, a small tension, a small holding on, and when it was gone, the archmage's face looked softer, more relaxed, closer to sleep. One more, they said, reaching toward the table again. And this time, their fingers closed around a small cloth pouch. Its fabric faded from what might once have been red to a soft pink, the color of dawn. From the pouch, they drew a stone. Not the smooth worry stone from before, but a different stone entirely. Rough and crystalline, shot through with veins of something that caught the firelight and turned it to scattered sparks. The crystal was modest in size, no bigger than a cherry, but it held the light beautifully, refracting it into small rainbows that danced across the Archmage's palm. A cave crystal, they said, tilting their hand to watch the rainbows move. From a cave whose name I never learned, in a mountain whose name I have forgotten. What I remember is the silence of that place, the deep, perfect silence that exists only underground, where the stone walls absorb every sound, and the darkness is so complete that you cannot tell whether your eyes are open or closed. I found this crystal by touch, not by sight, my fingers brushing against the cave wall as I felt my way forward. And suddenly, there was this small roughness, this small cluster of points that told me something beautiful was growing there in the dark. They closed their fingers around the crystal and held it for a moment, feeling its edges, its facets, the tiny prickle of the points against their skin. Then they opened their hand again and looked at it one last time before reaching toward the shelf. The place for this crystal was a small velvet-lined box, dark blue, its lid propped open to show the hollow within, shaped precisely to hold this stone and no other. The Archmage lowered the crystal into the box, watching it settle into its bed, fitting perfectly into the space that had been made for it. And then they closed the lid with a soft click, sealing the crystal away in its private darkness, its private silence. Kept safe, they said again, the words becoming a rhythm, a quiet incantation. Put away, nothing to chase. Another breath, slower this time, deeper. The fire crackled once, softly, and then fell quiet. On the small table beside the Archmage's chair, a plate had appeared at some point during the evening. Perhaps I had brought it. Perhaps it had simply materialized the way such things do in places where hospitality is an old and well-practiced art. Upon the plate sat a small biscuit, golden brown and still slightly warm, and beside it a pot of honey with a tiny wooden dipper resting in its amber depths. The Archmage noticed the biscuit and smiled, a small, soft smile that seemed to warm their whole face. "Ah," they said. "Perfect." They broke the biscuit in half. It yielded easily, crumbling slightly at the edges, releasing a scent of butter and vanilla that mingled with the smoke and tea and old paper that already perfumed the air, and drizzled a small amount of honey over one piece, watching the golden liquid pool in the biscuit's porous surface before soaking in. "When I was a child," they said, bringing the honeyed biscuit to their lips, "my grandmother would make biscuits like these on winter evenings. She would let me help if I promised to be careful with the flour, and we would mix the dough together while she told me stories of her own grandmother, who had been a baker in a village by the sea. The biscuits were never quite the same from one batch to the next. Sometimes a little sweeter, sometimes a little saltier, sometimes golden and sometimes brown, but they were always good, always warm, always given with love, which is the ingredient that no recipe can capture, but every tongue can taste." They took a bite, chewing slowly, letting the flavors bloom upon the tongue, the butter, the honey, the faint hint of vanilla, the subtle sweetness of the wheat. The taste was simple and profound, the way all true comfort foods are. Not impressive, not complex, but deeply, completely satisfying. "There are some magics," the Archmage said when they had swallowed and brushed the crumbs gently from their robe, "that require no incantation, no gesture, no years of study. The magic of a meal shared with those you love. The magic of a fire on a cold night. The magic of small sweetnesses, given freely, received with gratitude. These are the magics that matter most, I think. These are the ones that last. They ate the rest of the biscuit in small, unhurried bites, savoring each one. And when it was gone, they licked a last trace of honey from their thumb and leaned back in their chair with a sigh of deep contentment. The fire had burned down again, lower now than before, and the light in the room was softer, dimmer, gentler on the eyes. The shadows had grown long, pooling in the corners, draping over the shelves like blankets over sleeping forms. The rain outside had gentled too, its whisper barely audible now, more memory than sound. The Archmage looked around the room, at the bottles gleaming softly on their shelves, at the drawers holding their folded memories, at the ledger resting closed upon the table, its new entries safe and dry, and a slow, satisfied smile spread across their face. "Enough," they said, and the word was not a stopping, but a completing. Enough for tonight. The inventory is tended, the records are kept. Each small wonder has been touched and thanked, and returned to its resting place. And now, they paused, and in the pause, the fire sighed, and the room seemed to settle more deeply into itself, like a cat curling into a sunbeam, like a traveler sinking into a soft bed after a long day's journey. "And now," the Archmage continued, their voice softer still, barely more than a whisper, "we rest." They closed their eyes and let their head rest against the high back of the chair. Their hands lay relaxed upon the armrests, palms down, fingers loose. Their breathing slowed, finding the rhythm of the room, the rhythm of the fire, the rhythm of the rain, all of them breathing together now, in and out, slow and deep and perfectly at peace. The shelves held their treasures in patient silence. The fire glowed on, steady and warm. And in the hearth room, surrounded by the gentle history of a long and adventurous life, the Archmage rested, needing nothing, wanting nothing, held by the warmth and the quiet and the soft embrace of the evening. The room had grown very still now, still in the way that only deep night can be still, when the world outside has gone to sleep and the world inside has followed. The fire had settled into its final form for the evening, a bed of embers that glowed red and orange and gold, putting out a gentle heat that asked nothing in return, that simply gave of itself because that is what fires do, because warmth is their nature, and sharing it is their purpose. I sat in the other chair, the one that had been empty, and watched the Archmage as they rested. They were not quite asleep. Their breathing was slow and deep. Yes, but there was still a flicker of awareness behind their closed lids, a listening quality to their stillness, as if even in rest they were keeping track of the room, of its sounds and its silences, of the way the night was settling around them like a blanket. On the small table between us, a single candle burned, its flame so steady in the stillness that it might have been painted there, a brushstroke of gold against the darkness. The shadows it cast were long and soft, and they moved only when the flame moved, which was almost never now, in this quietest part of the night. "There is one last part," the Archmage said, their voice barely above a whisper, their eyes still closed. "One last kind of inventory, not of objects, not of memories, but of the quiet things, the things that cannot be placed on shelves or recorded in ledgers, the things that exist only in the moment of their noticing, and then are gone, and then return again, new each time, and yet always the same." They opened their eyes, slowly, heavily, the way eyes open when they are very close to sleep, and looked toward the fire, watching the embers pulse and glow. "The warmth of a fire," they said. That is one. Notice how it feels upon your face, your hands, your feet, how it spreads through the room like a blessing, touching everything and everyone within its reach. The warmth is always there as long as the fire burns, but how often do we truly notice it? How often do we stop and say, yes, this is warm and warmth is good, and I am grateful for this moment of comfort. The embers pulsed, red to orange to gold and back again, and the warmth seemed to intensify for just a moment. Or perhaps it only seemed that way because attention had been drawn to it, because noticing a thing makes it more real somehow, more present. Name it, the Archmage whispered. Thank it, place it, rest. They were silent for a moment, and in the silence, the words seemed to hover in the air like dust motes in firelight, settling slowly, finding their places. The sound of rain, the Archmage said then, tilting their heads slightly, listening. There it is, behind the silence, under the stillness. The soft patter against the window, the whisper against the thatch, the endless gentle percussion of water meeting earth. Rain is such a peaceful sound. It asks nothing of us. It does not demand attention or response. It simply is, falling because falling is its nature, singing because singing is what water does when it meets resistance. The rain whispered on, and the Archmage's eyes drifted closed again, and their breathing slowed a fraction further, approaching the threshold of sleep without quite crossing it. Name it, thank it, place it, rest. Another silence, longer this time, filled only with the soft sounds of the room, the ember glow, the rain whisper, the gentle creak of old timbers settling, the barely there flutter of the candle flame. The smell of old books, the Archmage murmured, their voice fading now, growing softer with each word. Paper and leather and dust and time, the smell of knowledge resting, the smell of stories waiting to be read again, or perhaps waiting to be let alone, to simply exist on their shelves without ever being opened, holding their secrets in peaceful silence. There is nothing wrong with a book that is never read, you know. It still holds its world inside it. It still keeps its characters safe. The shelves around us seem to lean in at these words, their books and bottles and pouches and boxes all listening, all holding their own secrets, their own worlds, their own quiet magics. Name it, thank it, place it, rest. The Archmage's breathing had grown very slow now, very deep, the breathing of someone who is almost asleep, almost dreaming, hovering on that delicate edge between waking and not waking, where the mind begins to loosen its grip on thought and let images drift where they will. The feeling of being safe, they whispered, and now their voice was barely audible, a thread of sound in the quiet room. That is the most precious quiet thing of all, the knowledge that nothing needs to be done, that no danger approaches, that the door is closed and the fire is warm and the world outside, whatever troubles it may hold, cannot reach us here, not tonight, not in this moment. Safety is such a simple thing and yet so rare, so valuable. When we have it, we must notice it. We must name it and thank it and place it in our memory, so that later, in harder times, we can remember. Once I was safe, and I can be safe again. The candle flame dipped once, as if in agreement, and then steadied again. Name it, thank it, place it, rest. The Archmage was silent then, and I thought they had finally crossed the threshold, finally slipped from waking into sleep. But after a long moment, their lips moved again, forming words that were barely words, more breath than sound. The kindness of companions, they said, the taste of honey, the weight of a warm cup in cold hands, the softness of a well-worn chair, the patience of objects that wait to be tended, The way dust motes dance in firelight, the comfort of old routines, repeated until they become rituals, repeated until they become prayers, repeated until they become the very shape of peace. Each phrase hung in the air for a moment before fading, like candle smoke, like morning mist, like the last notes of a lullaby. Name them, thank them, place them, rest. And now the silence that followed was deeper, fuller, a silence that was not empty but complete, a silence that held within it all the sounds that had come before, and all the sounds that might come after, holding them gently, keeping them safe. The fire glowed on, the rain whispered on, the candle burned, steady and still, and the archmage rested, their face peaceful in the ember light, their hands relaxed upon the worn arms of their chair, their breathing so slow and so deep that each breath seemed to take an hour. Each breath a small journey from here to somewhere quieter, somewhere softer, somewhere the worries of the waking world could not follow. The ledger is closed now, and the shelves are quiet, each small wonder returned to its place. The fire has settled into a steady hush, and the room feels kindly and complete. You do not need to hold on to anything. Just let the warmth stay, and let the story drift where stories go when everyone is safe. I will tend the fire for a while longer, making sure it keeps its gentle glow through the deepest hours of the night. The rain will continue its soft song against the window, and the old timbers of the tavern will creak now and then in their settled, comfortable way. And somewhere in the rooms above, the archmage will dream of journeys taken long ago and of journeys yet to come. All of them peaceful now, all of them kept safe in the inventory of a life well lived. Rest now, traveler. The story is told, and the night is kind, and there is nothing to do but let the warmth hold you, let the quiet keep you, let the peace of this place become your peace, at least for a little while. Name it, thank it, place it, rest. The fire glows on, the rain whispers on, and somewhere, in the softest part of the night, the world turns slowly toward morning, and all the quiet things wait patiently in their places, keeping their secrets, holding their light, ready to be found again whenever they are needed. But not tonight. Tonight there is only rest, only warmth, only the gentle breathing of the hearth room, in and out, keeping time with your own breathing, which has grown slow now, and deep, and perfectly at peace. Sleep well, dear traveler. The inventory is complete, the magic is kept safe, and the morning, when it comes, will find everything exactly where it belongs. Good night.